Book 2, Purple Gowned. Chapter 1, New Arrivals. The news reached me and many others of the Purple Gowned that a number of people had suddenly died and would soon arrive in the hall of reception. I knew that I must go to help in the welcoming of them. At first I wondered why this should be, as angels usually perform this service. Then, reaching out for the answer, I knew. These people were so unready for heaven that they would only be frightened if they met an angel. This was the Father's loving plan, to send the purple gowned who could help to reassure them. As I journeyed on my way, I reflected joyfully on the all-embracing love of the Father for his lowliest, as well as his highest creatures. From the heights where only the highest orders could even touch the fringe of his glory, he stooped tenderly over these bewildered little newcomers, read their puzzlement, understood their fear, and fulfilled their deepest need. He was as present to them, if only they had been able to realize it, as to the highest of the high in the angelic realm. Then I caught my breath, in sudden awe, for I remembered that this same mighty presence was with me. Yet I, too, was unaware, for as yet, though purple-gowned, I ranked lowly in the great plan. As I drew near, it seemed as though the hall of reception was a vast plain, and that massed all over it were clusters of waving daisies. If this was so, it must have been a very breezy day, for the daisies swung and pranced, bowed and reared, turning this way and that repeatedly. Watching with my extended heaven sight, I realized that these were the newcomers, clad in their white robes of entry. Even as I watched, some of the purple gown began to arrive, and immediately many of the groups broke up, while others faded away swiftly here and there. As I arrived, many of the guides were passing by, having in their wake a small number of the babes. Slowly, I began to walk over the grass, my glance keenly alive to all around me. Now that I was actually in the hall, the groups seemed much thinner. Indeed, I had to walk quite a long distance before I passed anybody at all. There, to my left, in the familiar valley sloped down, I caught the silver glint of water and rejoiced once more in the belt of stately trees. To my right stretched the climbing hills, and this time I saw them scattered with the daisies moving on their first heaven walk. It was all very lovely. I took a deep breath of the fruit-spiced air and wondered how anyone could ever weep here. For there was somebody weeping, that was evident. The dry sobbing sounded on my ear quite close, and walking around a tall boulder, I found a woman sitting with bent head. "Hello," I said. "All alone?" It seemed a foolish thing to say, yet my instinct warned me to be matter-of-fact and casual. Sometimes this is the very best way to put a person at ease. For a moment she glanced up, half smiling, and then her face clouded over again as she dropped her head. I glanced round. There was no one else in sight. It seemed that she and I had this great plain to ourselves. She and I. This time I reflected a little uneasily. I had no angel guides to help me, to coach me before I spoke. This time I was all on my own. Then I remembered that I was purple-gowned, that I had seen the Lord, received his blessing, that the Great Mother had enfolded and caressed me, that I had known that I would never be weak or sad or lonely again. Of course, could I have forgotten so soon? I turned inward to my secret heart, and there in the depths I met my Master's eyes. I knew just what to do. Drawing nearer, I made to touch the woman's hand, but she pulled away fearfully. "Go away," she muttered. "You're an angel." "Oh, I know you're an angel. I want to go home where I belong, with real people." "Listen," I said casually, dropping to the grass beside her. "Tell me how Browning Walk looks now. Are the flowers as fine as they used to be? I remember how everybody in the road declared these were the best gardens within miles." "I've put in some stocks this year and forget-me-nots," she cried eagerly. "Mrs. Robinson," and then her voice ceased and she turned to stare. "How do you know, since you're an angel?" "I'm not an angel," I assured her quietly, but one just like yourself, only come here a little earlier, that is all." "But Browning Walk," she persisted. "How did you know about that? Perhaps angels do know—" "Did you not mention Mrs. Robertson?" I asked. "I used to go to her house sometimes. Last time her daughter was ill." "Oh, Doris Robertson used to work for you," she cried excitedly. "I heard about you. You died so sudden, too." "Why, so I did," I began, but my words were suddenly drowned by her happy laughter, and I joined in heartily. "To think I was ever sorry for you," she gurgled. "And all the time you were here, with a body and all." "Just as well as I have a body," I agreed, "or I could not travel about from place to place." "Are there places here?" "Yes, many places. In my father's house are many mansions," I quoted in my inmost spirit. I flew to the throne then, to hear the singing of those who praise him night and day whenever his word is quoted on earth or in heaven. "I would like to go to a place," she said wistfully, "but perhaps there isn't one." "Tell me," I invited. In our town, close to Browning Walk, there was a hall. It used to be open in the evenings, and then we could all go there to sit and talk about, you know. Did you ever go there? No, but I understand they have those halls in most towns. "Ah, but not as good as ours," she interrupted. "The mayoress—" "Oh, but what is the use? There would not be a place like that here." "Do you think," I asked gently, "that the father's loving plan for his children would be less than your plan for yourselves?" She looked taken aback and a little nervous at that. "I didn't mean any harm." "Of course not. There's a hall here, like yours, only much better. Instead of only being open in the evenings, it is open all the time, and there are people waiting to welcome you right now." "Oh!" Her face was radiant. "Take me there quickly. Is my mother there? She loved to chat in the evenings, and Gladys and Bert, they died last year." "Suppose you go and see," I invited. "Remember that heaven is the home of the all-loving God. He loves us." "Oh, do learn this well. He loves us. Just be happy in his love and try to show his love to all you meet. Just try to learn the lessons he teaches. Oh, and you can be happy now, for you have come home." Yes, yes, I do see a little, and I am glad I'm here. Only take me quickly to that wonderful place. What is it called?" "It's called the Hall of Friends." As we went on our way, I promised to come to visit her quite soon. Chapter 2. Hubert's Rebellion. When I returned to the hall of reception, I knew at once where I should go, for a man's need had called me to his side. He was walking up and down on the grass, now pausing to gaze down into the valley, now shading his eyes, quite unnecessarily, to scan the distant hill. He was a tall man of middle age when he left Earth, and he would have been handsome had it not been for his anger. An angry man cannot look attractive, and he certainly looked far from it as he swung along, glaring about him. "Hello, friend," I greeted him, falling in by his side. He spun round. "Where is this place?" he asked fiercely. "Do you not know?" I countered, watching his face. I saw it change at that, grow darker still. It seemed to me that he guessed, but was too angry and too fearful to admit it. He stretched out a hand to grip my wrist. "Listen, chump. I don't know where I am, see? I want to get out of this place, to go home. I want to see my own folks." "You shall see some of them if you wish," I soothed him. "I want to see the ones I've just left," he hissed, his nervousness increasing. "Besides, I was ill. Listen," and his voice rose. "I want to go back to bed. I might die." At these last words his voice broke. I looked at him pitifully. The poor fellow had been afraid to die while on earth. I searched deeply into his mind and saw the whole miserable story. He had been an earnest follower of truth until a few years before. Then his little son had died. The hated prospect of death touching him so nearly, and the loss of his child had caused him to rebel. Oh, the pity of rebellion! Had I been an angel, I could have seen what this man might have been, the steady climbing through the years into greater strength and wisdom, the joy at the end. But this man had been prejudiced by fear. He had held his own idea about death, had decided that it was something to be feared. So when his little son left him, bitterness poisoned his mind. Poor fellow. I yearned to comfort him. In the silence, I turned to my master. Slipping my hand through his arm, I began to pace beside him. You have no need to think of dying, I said. All that is over. He stopped to stare at me. How can it be over when I still have this body? But I saw the light of hope in his eyes, and understood fully, at last, it was the process of dying that he feared, not death itself. Why should you not have a body? But how can I be dead and still have the same body? Not the same body, I corrected. But it is. He looked down at himself perplexedly. He slapped his thigh, adding half defiantly, There, you see, it's just as solid as when I was home. Of course it's just as solid. Now I began to follow his train of thought. An earthly body is used on Earth all the time that you live there, in conjunction with earthly objects. Its solidity is measured against that of the Earth. In this realm, a spiritual body is used in conjunction with spiritual surroundings, and so it's just as solid here as a physical body is there. Do you understand? I think so. He owned it, but his expression was still one of puzzlement and reluctance. All the same, I thought people in heaven looked like steam or mist or something like that. If you take earth and steam together, I pointed out, one is much more solid than the other. But if you measure earth and steam with steam, they are equal. Are you trying to tell me it's all steam, mist, illusion? He burst out. I have come to a nice place. He had quickened his pace still more, and I strode out beside him. For a while there was silence, while we each gathered our forces. Then I turned to him with a sudden resolve. You like gardening, Hubert? Yes. But how did you know my name, anyway? He growled. Never mind about that. You will be able to learn many things when you have let go of preconceived ideas. That is what keeps Earth people ignorant, I quoted my angel. Now, suppose I were to show you a garden more lovely than any you had seen before. Would you believe then? For the first time he smiled at me. I might. Good. Then let us go. In a moment we were on our way. I wondered fleetingly if Arthur would be on his balcony, if he had built his story of fish flying, or if it had dissolved. In any case, he would instantly begin again. Dear Arthur. Now, I commanded. We stood on a hill adjoining Arthur's place. Below us stretched a vast expanse of flowerland. This is the Hall of Gardens. Hubert stood wordlessly beside me, but I heard him draw in his breath. His eyes travelled slowly over the ground, coming to rest every now and then, as though halted by wonder, then hurrying on. At last, he whispered, It cannot be. It just cannot be. What cannot be? All those flowers. He made a wide sweep with his arm. There are flowers of all seasons, all countries. How can it be? Do you believe me now? I queried. In a moment he had turned from me and was stumbling away. It's the climate, he burst out furiously. Why do you trick me? It's just a place I know nothing of. You certainly know nothing of it, I said pitifully, but I do not trick you. I have other work to do here. He turned with a quick apology, and I caught sight of the attractive being he could be if he were happily relaxed. I am sorry. Oh, I know you are doing your best you can. But why bother with me? Wherever this place is, I don't like it. It's all very well for you fellows, angels, fairies, or whatever you are. He said the last words with a slight sneer, and for a moment I began to feel annoyed. Then I brought myself up sharply. A purple-gowned being, angry with a newcomer, that would be indeed wrong. Vividly I recalled the patience of my guides with me, and yet they could see my mystic robe. I am just an ordinary fellow like yourself, I assured him, only I died earlier. Died? He muttered, as if this was really the other side of dying, all over. Listen, I cried gladly, seizing his arm. Will you believe that it is all over, that you are safely in heaven, and that this is a place of joyful fulfillment if I take you to see your boy? He was so amazed that he could not speak. I too wondered why I have not thought of this before. Then I reflected that the master could have given the command at the beginning if he had so willed. Yes, even in heaven, the ways of love are often hidden from our sight, until we rise and learn and draw nearer to the fringe of the light. Hubert and I were already journeying on our way before he spoke. Where is he? Can I really see Jack? He is in the Hall of Children. Oh, I expect he's grown. Let me see. He was 6 when he died, and that was... Time passes slowly here, I explained. You cannot measure it by Earth time. He will still be little Jack to you. Really? He was fast becoming comforted, yet with that wistful eagerness which revealed a lingering doubt. When I see him, all will be well. As we arrived, Jack was playing a game of ball with some other youngsters. He was a sturdy child, very like his father in his dark, intense look. But how happy he was. His laugh rang out, and leaping high, he caught the ball, shouting gleefully, "You're out! There is my boy!" whispered Hubert in a tone of wondering pride. Yes. Then Jack turned round and saw his father. He smiled warmly, but by no means excitedly. "Oh, hello, Daddy. We are having a fine game. I'm in next." He turned casually away, and I had to restrain Hubert from dashing forward to seize him. "Wait. But what does it mean?" he asked in bewilderment. "Doesn't the child care for me now?" "Of course he does. Did you not see his smile? But you see, he saw you only last night." "Last night?" Hubert echoed. He was staring at me fiercely again. "How can that be? I told you the child died several years ago." I took him by the arm. "Let us walk up and down a while we talk. Now, Hubert, set betwixt earth and heaven is a kind of island in the universal sea. It is called the plain between. Here, when you have longed particularly for Jack, you have travelled in your sleep, and Jack has left here to visit you." "All these years?" Hubert marvelled. "Yes. You and he often talked and walked and romped together. You were together last night, just before you died." "I was thinking of him," he admitted, "when I was so ill. No wonder Jack was not surprised just now." "May I go to him?" In a little while, I strolled up to where those two were talking animatedly together. Hubert was kneeling before his son, his hands on the boy's arms, and the child was laughing down into his father's face. "How jolly that you are going to live here now, always," he was saying. "I'm so glad I told you all the things my teacher taught me about the Father loving us. Jesus telling us stories made me so brave. Every night when I first went to see you, you were cross when I talked about heaven, but afterwards you got to like it." "Did I?" Hubert looked amazed. "Don't you remember?" queried the child. "Just before you came here you said you did believe. I'm so glad, for now we will both be able to visit Mummy." I faded quickly away from the happy scene. Another task was done. Chapter 3. Heaven is Fulfillment. My next charge was leaning against a rock when I reached her side. She was a young girl, pale of skin, but wiry and graceful, and she made as pretty a picture in her loose white robe as the trees behind her. I approached her cautiously, for she seemed lost in thought. When I knew that she had seen me, I smiled. "I am Bernard. Can I help you in any way?" She put out her hand and touched mine. "That is kind of you. I am Isabel." We stood leaning against a rock in silence. Calm as she was, there seemed to be undercurrents of sadness which I could not at first define. I was about to search beneath the surface of her mind, but decided to draw back and wait. Different people demanded varied treatment, and Isabel, I thought, would prefer to tell me our own story. "Tell me about yourself," she said at last. "Well, I've been here quite a while, or a very short time, I do not know which. Time has no measure here." "Is that an advantage?" "Yes, I think it is. You see, there is no sense of hurry and strain, no tearing of oneself away from a joy because of an hour's strikes. Then, with friends, one can have endless time with them, if one will, going deeply into absorbing subjects that could only be touched upon on earth. Are you happy here?" She was leaning her cheek against the rock, and she did not look at me. "So happy that I did not know such happiness existed." "You have all you desire?" "All and far more than I deserve." "Ah," she murmured. How much do any of us deserve? Very little. But does not the beauty of this place speak to us of the generosity of the Father? Does it? She whispered. Isabel, I chided, you cannot doubt the Father's love. No, no, she agreed hurriedly. Only it is hard at first. All your life you want a thing, and then at the end to have something else. When you have seen the Lord, I said in a hushed voice, for I felt that she was not far from him, you will meet the love light in his eyes, and then you will understand that you have loved him all the time. Oh, but I love him now, she cried passionately, turning towards me so that I saw the tears on her cheeks. I put my arm around her. I'm just being silly, I expect, wanting an impossibility. Well, I smiled, are you sure it is an impossibility? A friend of mine told me once that if people form a picture first of what they think a place will be like, it's very hard to get at the truth. You see, they go on looking at their mental picture instead of observing what they see before them. Yes, I see what you mean, but in this case, suppose you let me see this case, too. All right. When I was very small, I can only just remember, I used to live with my grandfather on his farm. Oh, it was glorious. I was allowed to run amongst the animals just like I wanted to, so I practically grew up with horses, pigs, cats, chickens. You know what it's like on farm. Yes. Then my grandfather died. Of course, I did not know what had happened then, but my mother came for me. She was an actress and took me on tour. After that, it was all travelling, stuffy lodging house rooms and the noise of the stage. No more country life for me. My mother trained me as a dancer, so I lived like that. She stopped, and I murmured, it must have been very hard, Isabel. It was, but something always kept me happy, always kept me looking forward, thinking it was worthwhile. It was the hope of living on a farm again. Sometimes I would sit dreaming of it between my turns, thinking that if I worked hard and saved, one day I could buy a holding, work it myself, and surround myself with animals. I used to pray so much about it. Did you? Yes, I used to tell the dear Lord that I did want to live a good life, a good, clean life that would please him, and in return I asked if I could have my life in the end. I did not mind waiting, I had just begun to save, and then it all came so suddenly, and I was here. Yes, Bernard, as I would have spoken. I know he is love. No doubt he has a wonderful heaven here. It was just the animals. I did love them so. So you had your preconceived picture after all, I smiled. Yes, but you don't mean, she broke off, hope lighting her eyes. You are coming along with me, I said firmly, linking her arm in mine. Oh, Isabel, as we started on our way, how could you think that he would not take our dearest dreams if they were good ones and give us only the ashes in return? It did seem hard, she confessed, seeing all those rolling plains and valleys and thinking there were no animals here. You mean that there are animals, I suppose? You shall see, I chuckled. I do believe you are enjoying this. And then I became serious again, saying gravely, it is a great joy to unveil the Father's love to men, even though one knows so little oneself. Do you know only a little? Yes, but as we rise higher towards the light, so veil after veil falls from the face of the Father's love. It must be very wonderful. Shall I wear a robe the same colour as yours one day? It is the purple gown, and I think that you will wear it very soon. Then I cried, we're here! Coming across the grass, smiling a welcome, was Marie. She caught my hand and pressed it. Bernard, I had your message. It is good to see you again. And to see you. I held her off for inspection. Congratulations, purple gown. What a hunger it was, Bernard, and when I saw my robe, I thought it would never be cleansed. How long it took. Long, I echoed. Why, you were much quicker than I. Forgive me for not being present at your clothing. My duties kept me in the hall of reception. I know, Stephen told me and brought me your message, though you may be sure I would have reached out for it anyway. Oh, to have seen him. I have seen the king in his beauty. Her voice trailed off, and then, but this is Isabel?" I stepped forward to introduce them, and I saw that Isabel was gazing at Marie with starry eyes, evidently quite prepared to hero worship a little. It looked like a very happy partnership. "Go with Marie, Isabel. She is a wonderful surprise for you." "Where is this place?" She was still holding on to a tiny doubt, so I said quickly, "The Hall of Animals." How her face lit up. "He is love. Oh, I knew he was love," she cried. And then to Marie, "What are you doing here? Are you here because you love animals too?" "Yes. What are you doing here?" "Marie, out with it now." "Well, I came here first because I loved animals." She was looking at Isabel and pretending to ignore me. "After a while, I went to meet the master." She paused and remained silent in sympathy. "And now it is my duty to serve in this hall for a time, so here I am." "I see." Isabel gazed at her pleadingly. "Will you take me to see the animals now?" "Of course I will." With linked arms, they started off together. Just as they left me, Marie cried out, "I have a surprise for you, Bernard. Call Bimbo and see who runs up with him." "Bimbo!" I called, knowing full well who his companion would be, and sure enough they came tearing into view, Bimbo and Rainbow, with a couple of frisky kittens and a canary and a cockatoo flying overhead. I flung myself on the grass and allowed Rainbow to kiss me as hard as he liked. "I know, old man," I said, taking a paw out of my ear, "but you have been happy. Own up now." Rainbow only grinned. We made an arrangement after that. He was to stay on here, exploring the place as much as he wished, and I would make this kind of headquarters and return to him frequently. He was particularly pleased about this, as he had never had long enough to visit the interior, and his adventurous heart thirsted after it. "It had been a long time," he panted. "Are you not scared of being eaten by a lion?" I asked, forgetting for the moment that he had come here at birth and knew nothing of earth ways. "Am I afraid of being eaten by you?" he retorted slyly. At least that was the impression he pressed upon my mind. He went on to tell me of the big cats who lived in the interior, and the thrilling games he wanted to play with them. "I am going to ride on a tiger's back," he boasted. I gathered the little fellow onto my knees, pulling his ears to meet at the tip of his nose, as all good spaniels should, and then I told him about Isabel, or as much as he could understand. "Keep an eye on her, old chap," I finished casually. "You know animals in heaven have a very special job, to bring the healing of joy to the newcomers. Don't fuss, but just be there when she wants you, and tell some of the others to gather round too." Rainbow looked at me with shining eyes and seemed to nod his head at this. "Now let me see," was the impression borne in upon my mind. "I could get some of the fellows to be there when I am away. I cannot be there all the time, of course." "Of course not," I said hastily, remembering the lions and tigers. "Got some work to do," he continued importantly. "Now Bimbo could be on call in my absence. He has seen the interior anyway." "Is that where your work is?" "Partly," he hurried on, pressing swift pictures into my brain. "Bimbo will always be somewhere near Marie, and Marie will always be somewhere near Isabel," he mused a while. "I know the very crowd. There's a baby kangaroo." He fell out of his mother's pouch. She must have been careless. "Anyway, he's as happy as he can be with a young rabbit he has palled up with. And a monkey is mothering the two of them. The only difficulty is that a tortoise insists on joining them, but he holds up their games because they have to wait for him to catch up. Only, of course, they could not tell him or it would hurt his feelings. I guess they like him, really." All this Rainbow impressed on my mind without a bark, and when he had finished I gave him a great hug. "You're a born organiser, old boy. That arrangement will be fine." Chapter 4. I Help Richard. On my way back to the hall of reception, I was called aside by another of the purple gowned. He was a young fellow, slim and fair. Looking into his eyes, I knew that he had known little of earth life. His glance held that serene, clear look which one sees in that of a very young child. "Bernard," I sent out a message, he explained as I arrived at his side, "hoping you had not drawn your mental veil. You see, I want your help." We clasped shoulders. "Greetings, Richard. Am I right in thinking that you have long been of the purple gown?" "Yes," Soon I am to receive the first star." He looked so happy that I knew this was something thrilling. I was just about to ply him with questions when he began, "Let me tell you about my charge." "All right," I agreed, a little regretfully, but of course I knew that service to others must come first if we were to have true joy. "She wanted to have a baby while on Earth," Richard explained, "but she never did. It was just the one desire of her whole life. Not that she fretted, but she carried it in her secret heart, dreamed and prayed, you know?" "Yes, I understand." "She always kept her faith and her trust in the love of Jesus." He said the last word with such tenderness, with such a note of awed adoration, that the tears sprang into my eyes. Oh, fortunate Richard, and surely well deserved, the first star. "She is not surprised to be here," he went on, "but she cannot get over the thought that it is all over, that now she will never have her wish." "Poor mother," I murmured. "Mother?" he questioned. "But that is just the point. She is not. Have you not heard of the mothers of the plain between?" "Only that the mothers meet their children in sleep," he said perplexedly, "but those are real mothers." "These are real mothers too. People on earth think so much of bodies. They desire to have children who will look like them, an unconscious conceit, but he understands. Now the reason they want children to be of them and to resemble them is because they want to have proof that something of themselves will live after their own death." "Yes, I see that. And of course, in heaven they do not need this proof because they know that they will live forever." "Exactly. But what of the companionship? A woman longs for a companionship that is closer than any other. Nothing can be quite the same as a child of her flesh. Elsa made that clear to me just now." "I see she did," I smiled. "The dear fellow must have been a deep comfort with his gentle ways and great child eyes." "People on earth," I explained, "are, as it were, separated into compartments by their bodies. Each compartment has its own little window through which the individual gazes out towards others. Now the one crying need of their heart, although they do not always realize it, is to get close to one another, to pierce that confining sheath. This is the root of the two greatest loves on earth, mother love and marriage love." "You are wise," Richard said simply. I passed it by in silence, not pausing to explain that I had drawn from the eternal wisdom stuff of heaven's realm. "When a woman arrives here with that longing unfulfilled," I went on, "she has to be shown that she has no sheath. True, she has a body, and this body closely resembles the one she had on earth, but this is no longer acting as a compartment." "Why is that?" "Richard, you know how you could draw all this knowledge for yourself, if you willed." "I know, but even in heaven it is sometimes clearer to have another person draw and explain. Call it laziness, if you like." "I understand, for I feel just like that. Well," I continued in answer to his question, "with her advent into heaven, she has been given spiritual powers and senses. By helping her to unfold them, we teach her that she is close to all beings, no longer alone or neglected or isolated. Then she does not desire to have a child of her own body because she is equally close to all children." What a marvellous discovery. Of course, it sometimes takes a little while to help her to see this. She may want to see it, but at first be unable to grasp it. That is where our patience comes in. But as soon as she has understood, she has the knowledge for all time, then all children become her children. That is wonderful. Richard was silent a moment. "Now tell me what you meant when you called her a mother." "Oh, I was saving that for the last," I laughed. "Or else you might have rushed off to tell her the news without waiting for the whole story." "What news?" "Elsa is a mother of the plain between. Children come here sometimes who were not wanted on earth. When the other kiddies visit the plain between and come back with glowing stories of their mothers, could we deny these little ones? No, but how?" "Each one of these kiddies," I interrupted, "is given a mother on earth to love and pray for and visit. Gradually the mother is drawn in her sleep to the plain between, and they're introduced to her child. Thus they become truly mother and child. You see, there is no confusing or confining sheath to separate them. They can become as close as the heart of any woman could desire. Does every woman have a child in the plane between? No, because there must be the desire to draw her, but any woman who has yearned for a child of her own finds full satisfaction there. A delightful relationship is set up, the mother playing and talking with the child, the little one recounting its heavenly adventures, the lessons it's learned. Then, of course, praying for the mother constantly. When death unites them at last, they know one another intimately and are acknowledged as mother and child throughout the realm. Oh, how good the Father is. He is most truly all love. And Elsa, she has a child here? Yes. Go on, my dear fellow. Tell her about it. As you speak, she will begin to recall it, and when you take her to the Hall of Children, she herself will single out her child. Bernard, goodbye. He was away on his errand of mercy. Chapter 5. Into the Void. As I reached the fringe of the Hall of Reception, word came to me from Stephen that he would like to see me. I was particularly glad of this invitation, for I had laboured long over the newcomers and thought a rest would be very pleasant. I turned at once and started off towards him. He guided my direction with his mind. It was a joy to speed on my journey, and I gave myself up to it with every power of my spiritual senses. It was the longest journey I had made since my arrival, for I went into country that I had never seen before. It was all very beautiful. Sometimes I was travelling over scenery that much resembled earth, with its plains, hedge-divided fields and gleaming water. Sometimes I circled a coastline for a long way, watching the waves prance up the beach and cliffs, spill their foliage almost into the sea. Then I journeyed for a long time through a strange scene which gave the impression of skimming over the face of the globe. There was no ordinary scenery to mark my progress, and the light was of a particular blue tone. All was still, and the vastness of the expanse through which I was passing filled me with wonder. Curiously enough, I felt no nervousness, for a sense of companionship and protection enfolded me. Later, Stephen told me he had watched my journey all the way, guiding me and giving me his fellowship every moment. After a long time of stillness, though in reality I was moving at great speed, light clouds began to drift by me. I became conscious of a soft breeze on my face, and a moment later found myself on a hilltop. Moving toward me was Stephen and another man. They both broke into a run as they drew near. Stephen put both hands on my shoulders and gripped hard. At last! We have been watching for you for a long time. We climbed the hill as soon as we saw you arrive here. How are you? Does all go well? I was so pleased to see my friend again that I could only gaze into his laughing eyes at first and smile my replies. Then I managed to say, How good to be with you. Yes, all is very well. And you? Magnificent. Indeed, his whole being expressed exultation. I have met the one. Then seeing my puzzlement, Oh, you do not know yet. This is the one. James. He drew his companion forward and clasped my shoulder silently. We have spoken much of you, he said at last. His tone was deep. I felt drawn to him at once. There was something strong, firm, and rock-like about him. What hall is this? I asked at last, as we three began to stroll down the slope. I noticed that it was impossible to avoid treading on the flowers. They were growing so thickly, but they proved hardy enough to spring up behind our feet. They were quite of extraordinary brilliance, the richness of the poppy being almost pale in comparison. There was no reply to my question. I was about to repeat it when I found the answer in my mind. So this is not a hall at all, I cried in astonishment, but the plain between. I have never expected to come here. Please? Asked Stephen. Is he, the master, here? I questioned, and immediately James answered. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor might, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. After that there was a long pause. I am delighted to be here, I said at length. Is this a kind of holiday? You could call it that. I came here to meet the One and prepare you to meet the One also. Stephen, I cried in protest, what is all this talk about meeting the One? You are doing it to tantalise me. Partly, he grinned. He turned to James. Shall we tell him now, or wait until we reach the valley? I looked down the slope, dropping. It seemed an immeasurable distance over the edge of the world, and groaned. Evidently he does not want to wait, chuckled Stephen. Well, we had better begin. I should think so, I cried in mock indignation. So as we walked lightly and tirelessly over the flowery ground, they began their lesson. Just as the Creator began with 2, said Stephen, just as every prophet has had his disciple and every man his friend, just as the Master sent out his apostles 2 by 2, so it is ordained that all shall walk with a companion for eternity. He is called the One. I saw Stephen and James exchange an understanding smile, but I did not speak. The immensity of the thought was filling my mind. Sometimes, Stephen continued, 2 who are ordained to walk together meet quite early on in their life on earth. They may be brothers or sisters or playmates, or they may meet in youth and marry. Whatever will be of the highest benefit in future is brought about on earth. You mean? Stephen means that life on earth is but a very minute portion of eternity, James interposed. Earth is merely a preparation or training ground for the life to come. There, all that will be best fit a man for his life here is brought into his earth experience. In the eyes of the angels he is both a mortal and an immortal man, and when they look upon him with their extended vision, they see what he is on earth to be and beyond earth. Yet how important the little earth life seems at the time, I exclaimed. It is important, for it is the groundwork, the schooling, you see, but it is only the groundwork and schooling, and that is what earthlings so often forget. James walked on in silence for a while, and then he said, Go on, Stephen. Taking James's illustration of schooling, you will already see that different types need different kinds of preparation, just as various plants need varied climates and conditions. Certainly, I agreed. Some types develop well when learning in company with the One. Others grow most rapidly alone. You see, schooling is bound to bring discipline. I know, I put in, but usually it is easy to bear a bit of discipline oneself. It is seeing someone you care for tumbling over his first crazy earth steps, finished James. Look here, Stephen demanded. Am I telling this, or is this a kind of chant? Oh, you tell it, said James good-humouredly. I will not say a word. Well, just now and then, conceded Stephen, and as for you, he turned to me, twinkling, you are supposed to be the listener. So you see that some people have to go through life more or less alone, on the surface anyway. What do you mean by that? I demanded, forgetting my instructions. They meet here on the plain between during sleep, he explained. In this way they come to know each other really well, and not in that superficial way that is often called acquaintance on earth. That accounts for the feeling that they have met before, when sometimes earth people are first introduced. Then, if one is taken before the other, they continue to meet during the earth one's sleep. Thus, the partner who has reached the heavenly realm is able to impart knowledge, comfort, and of course pray powerfully for the other. How little we realise on earth of the vastness of the Father's plan, I exclaimed. Or its love, added Stephen. Of course, even when the second one dies, they do not meet and continue their journey at once, but each must be equal, each must be purple-gowned, and each must have given his service in the hall of reception. Is that just a rule, or is there a reason? Of course there is a reason for everything, said James. Each partner has to learn to live for all men and not just for himself, or for the 2 of them. Coming freshly from earth, with its sense of separateness and the consequent emotions of trying to pierce another's sheath, there would be a tendency to turn to each other instead of living outwardly for the good of all. What a wise rule, I acknowledged. But once one is purple gowned, Stephen finished, one has received a ray from that great loving heart. There was a silence after that. We finished our descent and entered the peaceful valley. To my surprise, I saw the roofs of houses between the trees and heard the laughter of children. In the distance was a sandy beach, with long waves creaming up it. Are there buildings here? I asked in surprise. Yes, it is very similar to Earth in many ways, said Stephen. Yet so different in many others, amended James. Here being a plain between earth and heaven, it partly resembles both. There are houses, as you see by the roofs over there, but they are not owned by individuals. Anyone may acquire a house to live in, and they are never closed or locked, but remain open at one side, like a summer house on earth. Chapter 6. The Plain Between. We had continued our walk as James spoke, and now we came upon an open space, flanked on three sides by trees. The centre of the clearing was short grass, studded here and there with the brilliant flowers I had seen on the hillside. On each of the three sides, set with their backs against the trees, were the most colourful buildings I had ever seen. In height they resembled bungalows, and they were built of what appeared to be a stone of a pearly sheen. In the light, summery light, it glowed and sparkled in 1,000 iridescent colours, which produce an effect almost too beautiful to be real. There were no windows, for the whole of the front of the houses was open, the interior being in shadow so that only glimpses could be seen. The roof substance appeared to be of thin slats of wood or matting, extending over the houses in front to form a kind of veranda. Over each roof drooped a great tree, its whispering leaves filling the air with music. In my surprise, I had come to a halt on the edge of the clearing. The beauty and unexpectedness of it held me speechless, and all the while questions were hurrying through my mind too swiftly for me to reach out for an answer. Who lived there? Did they build the houses, and how were they kept in repair? Was there no protection against the weather? Who designed the clearing? Was this a street, and were there any other streets? What did people do here, and where were they now? Suddenly Stephen's voice cut across my thoughts amusedly. All these things you will discover by and by, my friend. Perhaps you would like to rest now and take a little refreshment. Without waiting for me to reply, which was just as well since I was so amazed by everything I saw, he led the way across the grass into the cool green depths of one of the houses. As I followed, it struck me that it resembled a place under the sea, for the light streaming through first the green of the tree overhead, and then the slatting, gave the effect of sea-coloured rippled calm. The sense of rest, of sanctuary, was amazing. I just sank down into the pile of cushiony stuff without a word, and lay with hands under my head, gazing up and breathing as deeply as I could. The sound of children's laughter roused me at last. I opened my eyes slightly and lay gazing out under my lids onto the grassy clearing. It was peopled with the happiest of little ones. Some were playing games with their mothers, or perhaps teachers or friends. At any rate, the adults were evidently as happy as the children. I spied many a father bowling for his son, or crawling on the grass with a passenger astride him. Along the edge of the green, a fat baby took his first toddling steps while his mother knelt before him, holding out her arms with pride. I could not help comparing it with a village green, an ideal village green that many a man and woman has built before his castle in the air. At first I imagined that I was on earth again. Then the remembrance of my journey, my subsequent meeting with Stephen and James, returned with a rush. I opened my eyes wide, rolled over onto my downy couch, and found my friends regarding me. Had a nice rest? Stephen inquired. James just smiled at me. Glorious, I cried, marvelling. It seems as though I had never slept before, as though I had never understood what sleep is. Then you must be hungry, pronounced Stephen, rising. Oh no, I began, and stopped, for I suddenly became aware of an appetite, a zestful desire for food greater than I had ever experienced on earth. Make it plenty, old man, I finished urgently, and they both laughed at that. Have a peach, said Stephen, dropping something onto my couch. I turned to pick it up and then stared. Why, it's bigger than a melon. Yes, where did you get it? Off a tree in the wood here. There are hundreds of them. I held it between my hands, trying to remember. Why, Stephen, I cried excitedly, it's your peach. It was the father's pattern, was all he would say. Eat it up, James commanded. I saw they had one each. Also, we all fell into silent enjoyment. The first bite into mine was a revelation. It just turned the delicious, juicy flesh over in my mouth wonderingly. It took quite a long time to eat that fruit, and when I had finished, I was fully satisfied. Now break the kernel with your teeth, James instructed, and drink up the last drop of juice. I held the orange-like thing between my fingers and shook it inquisitively. It gave out a drum-like sound as the juice struck against the outer skin. Following their example, I bit into it at the top, stretched the taut skin into a lip, and drank. Very soon, all that was left was a wisp of crinkled brown stuff. Eat that too. It tasted of nuts, and I chewed it for a long time before swallowing. Fruit, nuts, and wine, I exclaimed. You are a marvel, Stephen. It was the father's pattern, he said again. All I had to do was work over it to get it exactly as he designed. But that was in the Hall of Food, I pointed out. How did it come to be here? James leant forward to tell me. As soon as anything is perfected, it pleases the Father to give it everlasting life. From that moment it begins to grow all over heaven's realm and in the plain between. Do they need much attention while growing? No attention at all, Stephen assured me. There are no adverse weather conditions except in the Hall of Adventure, and that makes heaven for the sportsman. As the weather is always favourable, everything grows without a pause, then nothing decays. These houses, which man built to the Father's design, remain like this forever. They need no attention, no cleaning, even for there is no dust. Don't things get very overgrown? He who commanded the waves to be still commands also nature's growth. He can still it at any point, and it remains, as it were, mute under his hand until permission is given to grow again. Chapter 7. The Golden Sash. Oh, the power, the wisdom, the love, I murmured, trying to release it all. After a while I asked, what of the people? Who are they, and where were they when we first came? This is the plain between, Stephen explained. That was all he said, but it opened up my link with his mind. I just lay drinking it all in. The plain between, so this is where people met. People from heaven's realm and people from earth who had left their bodies in sleep. Then these people, I looked searchingly at them, were from both heaven and earth. You cannot see any difference between them, I said at length. Why should you? Responded James in a matter-of-fact tone. Each has shed his physical body on earth. Because one sheds his sheath for a few hours only, why should his spiritual body appear to be different? If a man takes off his overcoat for an hour whilst he visits a friend, does he appear to be different from the same man who hangs his overcoat on a peg for the night in his own home? The force of this argument completely convinced me. I just lay watching these people as they laughed and played, talked and lived. How ordinary it was. A foolish men who fear to shed their earth body. And then a new thought occurred to me. What of their robes? They do not appear different after all the reparation and cleansing. Those are visible to the angels. We do not look upon the mystic robe of another. Then, of course, the Master sees all. Presently, James broke the silence by saying gently, the Master will be coming soon. He is coming here where all can see him. Oh, it will be like Palm Sunday on earth. But in that moment, my gladness revealed to me more than was spoken in words. It will be like Palm Sunday in heaven, Stephen cried with an exulted ring in his voice. Every evening he comes to his people here. That is why it is so closely resembles the realm above. Will I be able to speak to him? Really be able to speak to him, even to touch his robe? Will I broke off breathless. All those things, Stephen assured me. He comes as a king among his subjects, as a friend among his friends, and as such we acclaim him. draw near, and he blesses us. From him you will receive the golden sash when you are united before him to the one, said James. I did not know what he meant by that, and my spirit was too hushed to find expression in words. I just lay there gazing out over the green where all the people had melted away. I knew that in the houses others were waiting, even as thus it fell out, even as Stephen and James had said. I cannot recall every incident. I could not describe it all, even if I would. I only know that every smallest wish to see him as he was in those far-off earth days was fulfilled. My ears still ring with the praises of the people and the music the angels played when he came. All they said of him, those simple fishermen, was true. Afterwards, when he had gone and everyone was hushed, I found that Janet was beside me, and I knew that she was the one. About my waist and about hers also was a sash of golden hue. These matched one another exactly. Inwardly, I knew that every pair of sashes matched, and that no two pairs were of the same shade. That just as many pairs of sashes as there were, so were their shades of gold, ranging from the palest straw colour to the deepest flame. I knew also that we had been united here, and all others too, because it was on this plane we had first met, where we had cemented our relationship while our bodies slept on earth. Truly it was fitting that here we should receive the golden sash.